Welcome to Plain Talk, where we're going to kick off Friday's episode talking about agriculture, which is on the minds of a lot of people right now. Trade uncertainty is impacting crop prices, and not just and by the way, not just impacting crop prices, but remember, farmers buy a lot of equipment and a lot of supplies, and a lot of those things are made with steel and things that get imported. So when we slap tariffs on those, the farmers end up paying those as well. So it's not just crop prices, it's also the input prices, all that equipment, all the supplies and things you got to buy to have a successful season and to farm successfully. The price of all that is going up as well. And also we have some odd things going on. The president of the United States, wanting to bring in beef from Argentina. That's upset a lot of people who own livestock and who ranch, who are not maybe not keen to that sort of competition, or why, at a time when they're hurting, we would be bringing in that beef. Now, one of North Dakota's most important agricultural groups is the North Dakota Farm Bureau. And the Farm Bureau is holding an election for new leadership. Current President Darrell Lees is not seeking re-election. Val Wagner is our guest today. She has served on the State and National Farm Bureau Promotion and Education Committee, as well as the Young Farmer and Rancher Committee. She was raised in agriculture from a rural community. She brings direct farm and ranch experience. Her and her husband are currently ranching. She grew up in the Forbes, Ellendale area. And she was elected to the District 3 Board of Directors of the North Dakota Farm Bureau in 2020. She was elected as vice president in 2023. And now she's seeking the presidency. Val, how are you?
Great. How are you this morning?
What's your pitch? I'm doing good. First of all, thanks for asking. And second of all, what's your pitch, to North Dakota's farmers and ranchers, for your leadership? I mean, what are their concerns right now, and how do you hope to advocate for them?
Oh, there are a lot of concerns from A to Z. There are a lot of different things that we're facing in agriculture these days. But more importantly, I think it's great and important for the leadership of the North Dakota Farm Bureau to actually have ag experience, and to be actively engaged in farming and ranching. And so that's I guess my pitch is for someone who has, day-to-day experience and those decisions that need to be made on the farm and the impact that it has, that's the person who is assisting with leading what I would say is the best general farm organization in the state of North Dakota. I have a lot of experience in different leadership roles and different volunteer activities involved in my community. But most importantly, I just want people to be heard, and I want the meetings that we have and the organization to be better at the end of the day.
So, Val, one of the things that you sent us in terms of your platform statement, it was a desire for Farm Bureau to be at the table, listen to people, all that type of thing. Rob referenced North Dakota Farm Bureau as being one of the largest ag groups, maybe the biggest ag group in the state. But, from sort of somebody who's not from agriculture, but engages in a lot of coalition work, that type of thing, it feels to me like North Dakota Farm Bureau over the last several years has become sort of an ideological organization. Like, I'll give you an example. Last election, when the property tax measure was on the ballot, while grain growers, farmers union, soybean growers, stockmen were all opposed to that, Farm Bureau was basically the only group in the whole state, no matter energy, agriculture, whatever, that was supporting that. And I will tell you, when that happened, there was a lot of of course, that's what Farm Bureau does. I mean, they're sort of seen as maybe a little bit more out of the mainstream these days. How do you fix that perception, sort of Farm Bureau sort of being solely owned by an ideological fringe?
Well, I think a lot of what we have to do is make sure that our membership is engaged. And so when we're having those conversations, when state leadership is having those conversations, that everybody is represented there and all viewpoints are represented, not just the loudest ones. Because at the end of the day, the best thing that Farm Bureau has for it is our grassroots involvement in how the policies that we pass are grassroots driven. And so we really need to get back to making sure our members feel heard and understand that when they're engaged at the local level, that does reflect at our state level as well. I really think that's our biggest thing is that we need to re-engage those members that we have started to not hear from because they feel like sometimes the fringe is getting more attention than they are. But again, because it is grassroots driven, we need to have our members engaged and involved.
What are some of the biggest priorities? Like, I mean, obviously you're running for this. And the Farm Bureau, I got to think there's two arenas. I mean, the one is obviously state level policy, and then the other is federal policy, where you spend a lot of time talking to our federal delegation, our two senators, and our member of the House of Representatives. So, in each of those arenas, like, what's the number one issue that if you're the president, you're charting the course, what are you focusing on?
Well, the best part is, as president of the organization, it's not what I focus on. It's what our members determine our organization should focus on. And that'll be determined in November when we have our meeting. Those discussions happen with all of our delegates present, and then we set forth what our priority issues are at that point. You know, there are several different things that is facing agriculture today that I think, we would be looking at, taking action on. But I think, especially in the state of North Dakota, one of the biggest things that we need to focus on is bridging that gap between agriculture and those that have been elected to serve. Because I think what we've seen, especially in Bismarck and our local areas, is that there is a disconnect to agriculture, and we need to make those connections again and reconnect and make sure that people understand not only where their food comes from, but how the decisions that they make impact what our day-to-day activities are. That to me is one of the biggest things that we need to focus on.
Val, one of the things that Rob alluded to earlier was your family has a cattle ranch. And as somebody who really likes to eat beef, I'd like to say thank you for that.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you for your service to our country. I also want to know where my beef is coming from. And so I'm a supporter of country of origin label. I've been reading some of the concerns about the president's comments about bringing in Argentinian beef. I think Representative Dawson Hawley went viral talking about how we should be supporting our farmers and ranchers here. So you become the head of this large farm organization. How do you handle issues when the president of the United States, who I assume the vast majority of your members support, says things like that potentially hurt your industry? How do you because this won't be the last time. So how do you handle that?
I think communication is key. The same thing happened several years ago when Waters of the U.S. and EPA, we were looking at different things, different rules that were coming down that would impact our farm personally. I personally wrote to our administration at the time and, stated how the current ruling at that time, how it would impact my farm. And actually was contacted by the White House staff and had a communication with them regarding, living in the prairie pothole region, what that means for us and how it's not just some, obscure rule, how it would impact my farm directly. And so then, I was able to actually have communication and interaction. And I'm not saying that impacted how things turned out, but I think that communication is key. We need to make sure that we're being heard and that they understand the impact of those decisions that are being made. But there's so many different levels to that in different areas that we look at. I'm also a school board member, so I do understand the importance of having affordable food available, especially in large quantities. So I understand what that looks like as well. As a mom of 4 boys, I'd like to say we raise beef because we just enjoy it. But it's great to be able to raise my family on what we're growing as well. And we go through a lot of it. So I understand the the problems that we see at the grocery store. But
If
those,
you have four boys, food prices are very important.
sure, for sure. And, staying within a budget. I understand all of that part of it. So we really need to have those conversations about what those impacts are, those things that sound really good on paper, that makes it seem like, oh, here's an easy solution. It's never that way. And
Right.
so I definitely think that that is one of the things that we're missing. It's just that sitting at the table and having those conversations.
One thing I think that kind of gets lost is there's two sort of categories of politics. There's partisan politics, which is a lot about candidates and campaigns winning elections. And then there's issue politics, which is about I represent an interest group. Maybe I represent dentists or I represent plumbers or something like that. You represent farmers and ranchers, people involved in agriculture. And so I think it sometimes gets hard because and Chad, I mean, Chad also works for a group that teachers and educators and public workers that their issue is not partisan. It's representing that group of people. So I think it's hard because our partisan politics have become so overweening. It bleeds over into where there becomes an expectation that groups maintain like an issue group maintains partisan loyalty. Is it difficult to navigate at times? Because I mean, listen, I think we can all agree no politician, no political party has a monopoly on all the good ideas. Sometimes they
Right.
promote things that are bad ideas, or sometimes just ideas that are good for one group of people but bad for another group of people. And that's hard. And I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with that. It's just reality. But is it hard to navigate those partisan waters right now where there's a lot of people kind of expect that there has to be this constant loyalty to a particular party or a particular candidate?
I agree. And especially, so my oldest son is 23 and my youngest son is 16. So trying to kind of assist them with navigating what political waters look like and how to make decisions and how to discern things on their own and to make sure that they understand that it's more about values and choices and who people are as a person, not just the letter behind their name. Especially in a state like North Dakota, where it appears that your greatest opportunity or chance of winning is if you run as a Republican, no matter what you stand for. Um, I think it's difficult, especially in an organization that is nonpartisan, whose decisions all seem to be very partisan, because of where our membership lies, and those are some of our core beliefs. Talking about being conservative and different things like that. But yet, at the end of the day, it's again to go back to that. It's about the conversation and listening to our membership and deciding um, after they decide what our priorities are, making sure that those become, the priorities of the organization and it doesn't become driven by just one mindset.
Val, this is sort of an off the wall question, but I'm curious about it. How does North Dakota Farm Bureau and NODAC are they completely separate organizations, or is there some overlap between the insurance side and the advocacy side?
No, they are completely separate organizations. They have two completely separate boards. They are not, I would say that they have a relationship because they used to be housed more closely together. But that is no longer the case. And so that is, they're completely separate entities. In order to have NODAC insurance at this point, you do have to be a Farm Bureau member. That is one of the member benefits. But that's about where the relationship ends.
So one other question, a process question. You said is the election in November?
November. November
And,
21st and 22nd is our state annual meeting.
and who votes on that? Who comes to the convention?
Who comes to anyone is invited to attend the convention. Those who vote would be delegates that are selected by our county leaders. So each county, based on membership, has a number of delegates that they can send. And so those are the people who are eligible to vote.
So not unlike a party convention. Well, that's really interesting. Now, your opponent is Lucas Lang. And early on, you said it was important for the people leading the Farm Bureau to have actual farming experience. Tell us about. I mean, is he somebody with actual farming experience, or is that? I mean, was I took it as maybe you were saying that he didn't. I don't know Mr. Lang, so I don't know.
No, no, Lucas is an upstanding guy and
Sure.
has farming and ranching, with animals and agriculture experience. Um, just saying that as a leader of a farm organization, I think it's important that
Sure.
that is a focus.
Sorry, and I didn't mean to suggest that you were directing that at him. I was just making it clear, what you were saying there. Contrast yourself. I mean, obviously you're running for this. You're running against him. You're saying me, not him. So contrast yourself with him. What would be your different leadership style as composed if the membership chose him instead?
All I always say is that I feel like I am more of I prefer to sit at a table and listen and have conversations and engage that way. I feel comfortable talking to anyone on, any subject as far as, whether or not I agree with you. Feeling like we can, at the end of the day, if we need to agree to disagree, we agree to disagree. He is very, Lucas is very much so, in his beliefs and um, he's a great member of Farm Bureau. But I feel like I have an ability to connect and communicate with other organizations, and I have a lot of connections, not only within our state, but in other states too. So you talk about when we get to American Farm Bureau and going to the national level, having served on 2 different national committees, I've been able to make a lot of connections across our country with other state Farm Bureau presidents and other state Farm Bureau leaders, which just gives us an ability to have more conversations to make sure North Dakota is heard on a bigger scale.
Val, one of the things we seem to be talking about on this podcast a lot is the price of health insurance these days. And obviously, the members of Farm Bureau don't have the luxury of getting their health insurance often through their employer unless they have a spouse who works off the farm and that kind of thing. The insurance commissioner expressed some concern about if the ACA subsidies go away, that's going to lead to more expensive health insurance. Farmers and ranchers are the biggest users of those subsidies. Are you hearing a lot as you're going out to county conventions, concerns about how farmers and ranchers are going to pay for health insurance moving forward? Is that like a big concern?
It's always a big concern, because like you stated, we don't generally have that luxury of being able to fall back. Being self-employed, we have to come up with our own plans or different things like that. Now, one of the things that Farm Bureau has been working very hard on and we were able to accomplish in the last year or so here is we do have a health plan available to our members. Of course, it's not considered an insurance, but it is a health plan. And so we do encourage our members to check that out and see if they're eligible and try to provide them that type of relief as well. We're continually looking for ways that we can reach out to our members and provide them additional support. Um, but yeah, health insurance is a huge thing that I think um, farmers and ranchers are always concerned about. And I know, for many years, my husband included, before we were married, just figured I think health insurance plan was to cross his fingers and hope nothing happened. But as you have your families and trying to make sure that you're making decisions that's best for them and realizing just how quickly things can change um, without, without even intention. A couple years ago, our second son was in a car accident. He ended up getting flown to Sioux Falls. Thankfully, everything is okay, and he recovered. But without health insurance, that would have been, it would have probably changed our farm story. So, and again, those are conversations that need to happen so that people understand the impact that it has on day-to-day life. We're not just talking about generalities and pie in the sky things. These are actual impacts on farm and ranch families.
Talk a little bit too about, one area where is in building pipelines. And not just pipelines. I mean, I think pipelines grab a lot of the attention, Summit Pipeline, oil pipelines and that, but also transmission lines. Um, this is always a tricky business because on one hand, you know, we need that infrastructure. On the other hand, we also have to protect property rights along the way. So this has been a difficult thing. And I think some companies have handled it better than others. Summit has gotten a lot of attention. I think you could arguably say that they did not handle their relationships with landowners very well early on in the process. But, from the Farm Bureau's perspective, how does that obviously you are people that make your living from the land. It's the land is not just this aesthetic thing, this, nice landscapes as we drive by, on the highway. It is, or we enjoy hunting on or what have you. It is the way you make your living. You want to protect it, not just for yourselves, but for future generations. So talk about that a little bit and that, ongoing debate between, the people that want to build this infrastructure and the people that own the land it's to be built on.
And that's a tough one too, because when you're talking about private property rights, which is, one of the things that Farm Bureau, one of our founding beliefs is private property rights. And private property rights go both ways. So that means for someone to be upset about how their neighbor, what easements they give or whatever it may be, and someone who's upset whether or not that's even available to them or not. And so it's really difficult. One of the reasons why, Farm Bureau, we're as a state, we have kind of stayed out of that conversation is because it does go both ways. You should have the right to decide what it is you want to do with your land. And if that includes an easement, you have that ability. You should have that ability. And someone should not be able to stop that from occurring just because they don't like the idea of it. And so, it is difficult sometimes though when you're having those conversations because we're not just talking about, um, brick and mortar and this is just my business I go to day to day. These are legacies that are built and landscapes that people are familiar with and grew up around. And I hear a lot about um, how this is, isn't what grandpa had intended and different things like that. And although I agree, that it is important that we value our landscape and what it looks like, there are a lot of other places where we appreciate technology. And so we also have to acknowledge that, as time moves forward and as technology improves and different things like that. I mean, there was a time when people, didn't want to see, power lines to houses and now everybody, who doesn't have power to their house, everybody does. So we just have to be really kind of careful with those conversations, ensuring that when you're trying to, ensure you have your private property rights, that you're not infringing on someone else's.
Val, how can farmers and ranchers do a better job of telling the story to consumers about where their food comes from? I mean, we always joke, you ask a kid, where's your food come from? And they say grocery store, right? I think there is that gap of knowledge is widening probably. And now I feel like an old guy, sort of thing, but I do feel like we're missing.
You don't just feel like one. You look like one.
This is 2 straight episodes when we're taking some shots at my age. I can take it though. But how do we tell that story better to make sure folks understand that this food doesn't just show up at the grocery store, but somebody's growing it, somebody's butchering it, all that kind of stuff?
I think it's important just to have conversations. It's not about, you don't go into it just trying to educate someone about, you need to know this or you need to know that. You need to be able to just answer questions. Now, I will say, when I was a young mom, like I thought I knew everything and I thought I had all of the answers about, why people should decide where to buy food from and why this is the best and that is the best. And then, I think God kind of played a little joke on me and he gave me my youngest child had some food issues when he was born. and he had to limit the amount of protein he could consume, so that he could stay healthy. And when you're a beef farmer and your kid's not supposed to eat hamburger, it kind of makes you question a lot of things. But as I saw him thrive when he changed his diet a little bit, and now he's able to basically consume whatever he wants, I realized that people made decisions at the grocery store based on information I didn't have. So I was judging them based on the decisions they were making without having any context at all as to why. And so I think if we had our conversations before just jumping the gun and judging people on why they're making their decisions that they make, we would find ourselves in a lot better place. And so I personally just feel like the best way to have people understand where their food comes from and for them to care about where their food comes from is to talk to them about it, and for that to have a relationship with them so that they understand this isn't just, some, name on a box somewhere, that it really is a family that's behind all of this. And what that looks like for each person is a little different. But without those conversations, I think we end up in a world of hurt. And if we had just more conversations about it, I think people would be willing to talk more and understand more.
Val, thanks for your time and good luck next month.
Yes.
Thanks, Val.
Thanks so much. Thank you guys.